Whether you're a security engineer or in general concerned about your company being compliant, I think this session is for you. Today, I have Pauline Beyer with me. Hi, Pauline, how are you?
Hi, Andy. I'm good. How are you?
Very good. I'm really excited about this topic. I have to admit, I'm not at all an expert when it comes to compliance. So, being compliant, making sure that you're not storing any sensitive data. But I know that this is your topic. I have a blog post from you here that we also link in the video description. It's called Unified Privacy and Sensitive Data Management for Logs with the Sensitive Data Center. So we see obviously a lot of our customers ingesting logs, and we give them everything we can do to make sure that they are compliant already upon ingest. But I think sometimes it still happens, typically through configuration mishaps, that some sensitive data makes it into Dynatrace. And I think what you're going to show us today is going to help these people to make sure they're staying compliant. But maybe, Pauline, in your words, what do you do at Dynatrace, and what is the real problem that we're solving for our customers with the sensitive data center? And then I would like you to walk me through what a security engineer would do with this app.
Yeah, sounds good. So I'm a product manager for privacy here at Dynatrace, and my role is making sure that you, as our customers, can use the platform depending on your specific privacy needs. So making sure that we are covering our customers with extremely high privacy needs, such as banks or customers in the healthcare business, but also if you are not at all concerned with privacy because maybe you don't have a lot of sensitive data that you're processing in your daily life, that you can also configure the product to those needs as well. So this is my role here, and I'm excited to show you one of our newer additions now to our privacy posture. So as you mentioned, we already have masking at capture and at ingest. We already offer hard deletion for all our data types that are ingested into Grail. And now with the Sensitive Data Center, we're adding the Sensitive Data Scanner that gives you visibility into the sensitive data that is ingested through logs to Grail. So you are able to react very fast to whatever the scanner shows you.
Yeah. And the app is pre-installed with every tenant, I would assume, or do you need to install it?
No, you need to install it, but it's quite easy through the hub. And the scanner right now is in preview, so if you installed the app, you can easily click on the scanner tab and add yourself to the preview and test our new functionality out. And yeah.
Awesome. Perfect. Hey, Pauline, then I would say I will move the screen to the bigger screen because this session is all going to be about seeing this thing live. Can you walk me through the regular use cases and just show us how this works in the sensitive data center?
Yeah, happy to do that. So maybe before I walk through, let's start with an example. So we just had one of our larger retail customers end up with credit card data in their logs on Grail. And they are not supposed to have credit card data outside of the authorized systems. And so this was a real compliance exposure for them. And they already had masking in place and were also really conscious of how to configure Dynatrace to be compliant. But still, they are operating with a lot of different dev team in a lot of different departments. And one of those dev teams onboarded a new app that was tracking the transaction. And there we had credit card data, or they had credit card data slip through. And unfortunately also only discovered this ingestion after a week by accident, so to say. And after this, they were looking around in Dynatrace, how can we prevent this in the future? And are now one of our preview customers and using the scanner exactly to react faster to those slip-throughs that can happen. But instead of now only having to maybe configure masking and delete a little bit of data, they had to delete massive amounts of data, and it cost a lot of cleanup time. And the scanner is exactly what we're offering to reduce the reaction time, reduce the cost of cleanup, and so on. And yeah, when you when you come into the sensitive data center, you go to the scanner, and the first thing you would do is create your scan to really tailor it to your tenant and your environment. So for this customer, maybe in the future, they want to make sure that financial data is only or is detected right away once it is ingested and shouldn't be ingested. So they might want to look for IBAN and credit card numbers and choose an interval. So I would go for 6 hours, but you can also have a 12-hour or 24 hours interval. Yeah, that means that every 6 hours a scan runs and looks at the data that was ingested during the time frame. And for to maybe scale the scan even more, you can choose all log buckets or select certain buckets where you really don't want sensitive data because maybe it has a 3-year retention period, or it's just a bucket with where your users or where a lot of your users have access to. So maybe we want to include logs and our top secret bucket. And yeah, then you can fine tune it even more if you have certain process groups or processes where you know that you might be ingesting sensitive data. I would say this is more the case if you've chosen, for example, email addresses. So some of your applications you're monitoring or services might be ingesting email addresses, and you actually want those email addresses, and you have a valuable use case for them. So you might want to exclude this then with applying a policy. Then you name your scan, and then create the scan. I'm in the demo environment, so I'm not creating the scan right now. So this is how you set up the scan, and then it runs during the interval that you've defined, and you can then investigate the results also on this page.
Yeah, just to recap. So for me, this is also interesting because also your use case that you explained, this customer, that means they did everything, setting up rules in OpenPipeline. If they're using OpenTelemetry, I'm sure they have set up rules in the OpenTelemetry Collector to make sure data is cleansed on where they know potential PII data can come in, but still somehow they have missed it. This unfortunately can happen if you are having a large engineering organization. Maybe engineers are using a new library and there the logging is different, and maybe it comes in through different channels, bypassing some of the rules. And so this is a really great way to then say, I want to now set up a scan that runs every 6 hours to really make sure that nobody has bypassed any of our ingestion rule to strip out or to mask any confidential information. And then, I think the setup of the scan is rather easy, and it automatically scans it for you so that you immediately get notified in case there is any type of information. Yeah, so let's have a look into the results, because it seems, I would assume the red means there are some issues.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we actually apparently in this environment have quite a few issues we need to tackle. So let's look at maybe again financial data. So a scan that is looking for IBANs. We can see, it's looking for IBANs. It was looking at all logs. It was looking at all logs, and in the last scan, it found sensitive data. So I'm looking, I can investigate deeper. So our scans or overview page for each scan shows you the data flow of the sensitive data. So we have our different ingest sources here. So we have some logs that were ingested through OneAgent, some were ingested through OpenTelemetry, and others through API. We see that they ran through those two pipelines and that they are stored in those two buckets. Yeah, so if I'm now responsible to make sure our platform is configured correctly and is staying compliant, the first thing I would want to do is look deeper into where it's ingested from and then stop the ingestion. So for that, we have the option here to look at more sample detections. So really see what the detection is, if it looks like an IBAN, where it showed up in the content. So we can see this also reads like this is actually a transaction and this is a real IBAN. And yeah, drill down on the host name, look at the process groups, and yeah, get the different information you might need to fine tune your masking. And in this app, we've integrated the masking and also added documentation that is relevant for exactly this use case. So from here, we can jump right away to the OneAgent masking for logs, and we can also look at the documentation for OneAgent masking for logs. So let me open or jump to the logs configuration page, and there we have our sensitive data masking, and super easily can turn on our built-in rules. Now I'm going to do for credit cards and also IBAN masking. Save this, and now we shouldn't be collecting any more credit cards or IBANs through OneAgent here.
Yeah, that's cool. And I think this is really powerful because it shows you also where the data comes from. So we know OneAgent is obviously still the prominent source for most of our observability data, but it's also great to see OpenTelemetry, also the log ingest API. And that we, in this case, it looks like it was an access log from a gateway, maybe an Nginx or something. So that was interesting. And now your fix was obviously very easy because somebody didn't turn on the default rules, but it could be something that is very specific to your organization. And this is why in that rule configuration page in the settings, you can obviously create also your own rules if you happen to identify
exactly.
that.
That's a great point. Yeah, you have the option to set it up exactly how it fits to the ingestion that you've observed, and really go down to the processes and just mask what is relevant to you.
Cool. So this was now, we detected there were logs coming in that were captured by the OneAgent that contain confidential information. And for the OneAgent, it's a simple rule change that we are propagating down to the OneAgent. So from that point on, if the OneAgent is ingesting the logs, it will automatically mask or strip away this data. How about other sources like OpenTelemetry?
Yeah, we can just look at this. So we have the same functionality here. You can get more information. For the OpenTelemetry, we have masking and capture through the Dynatrace Collector. Here you have to configure the processors. So we've linked the documentation so you can easily walk through how to set this up. Excuse me.
That's okay, but this is really good that we are highlighting this because I know this is a challenge with this. If you're ingesting this via OpenTelemetry and you're obviously responsible for then also running your collectors. Great news is we show if sensitive data comes in, and then we give you also the documentation on how to then adapt your receivers or your processors on the OpenTelemetry Collector to remove this data. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And on the documentation page, we also have quite a few examples on how to configure it, so you don't need to build all of this yourself, but copy paste it.
Mm-hmm. And obviously, I'm not sure if you know, but with our recent acquisition of BindPlane, I would assume that some of this will then even get more automated and even centrally managed through the acquisition that we just made. Yeah.
So we will soon you will see the BindPlane ingestion pop up here as well.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe here. We will
Yeah.
see how it fits best into the product.
Perfect.
Also, I think what is going to be a cool new addition to the scanner is that we will also support custom patterns coming in October. So you can also then set up your scans to search for your custom patterns that you might have configured in OpenTelemetry, in Log, OneAgent, or later also in OpenPipeline. So we are always trying to grow with what we're offering in the product, so that you really have this as the landing plane or landing section to configure and to make sure that data is ingested the way you want it to be ingested. Then right now in this scan, we have another ingest source. So the log API ingestion. Here, we don't have masking at capture, but we have our masking in OpenPipeline. So for that one, I would jump right into OpenPipeline. It is again similar to OneAgent and OpenTelemetry in how you can drill down on the detections. And then we are linking you to OpenPipeline to set up a processor to configure masking there.
Which means this is also obviously applicable to data that comes in through the OneAgent or OpenTelemetry, because ideally we are masking and removing data at the source. So with OneAgent, we have seen that configuration. With OpenTelemetry, we've shown how this can be done through OpenTelemetry Collector configuration. But eventually the data goes through OpenPipeline, and that means for any type of source, what you're showing here, will still be another kind of a gateway to say, what happens with the data that comes in.
Yeah, exactly. So basically our maybe second layer of defense on top of the masking we have at other places already. Yeah. No, but that's exactly how a really good description, I would say. So then with the findings you have for OpenPipeline, you can go into the look at the different pipelines and set up processes for them, or even set up a new pipeline with a specific processor that you in the future route your data through. But in this case, I just want to add a processor. Just want to add a processor to this pipeline. And I can do this here using DQL. And I've configured now a matcher already from the data that I found in the scans. We'll just add this here. And this one I'm going to call mask IBAN in this case. And then you choose what you do with the how it's supposed to show up. So here we are replacing it. And this is then set up as our mask IBAN. And in the future now for pipeline 2, it should reduce the results we have there. And of course, you can, with the processors, fine tune it again to to your specific needs. So what I've shown is quite high level, and then of course you can drill down whatever makes sense for your organization.
Yeah, and folks, we will also add some links in the video to previous recordings we did on OpenPipeline. There's existing material out there. There's also a lot of documentation about OpenPipeline configuration. So check out the links in the video description. Nice.
Cool.
What else?
Yeah, so now we stopped the ingestion, but we know that we have some data still that was ingested into Grail. So now we have the option here in our Grail section to really deal with the data that was ingested. So we have different options. We can change the retention period for the bucket, for example, through bucket storage management. We are also just linking here from the app. So if you know for this whole bucket that we've ingested data, we want to just reduce the retention period this time, we can do this here. But I would say this is quite a strong reaction to what has happened. So we have maybe our more fine-grained options you can take. So we have the option to change the access permissions to this data that was ingested. And you can go as fine-grained as the field sets. So really narrow it down who can see the IBAN still, or reduce it completely, but keep the value of the logs that you've ingested. Then you can also, if especially with financial data, even with permissions, you might not be allowed due to your company's regulations to keep it here. So there, the option might be, or it might be better to really delete the records that have the sensitive data or the financial data now included. So for that, we can use the functionality we have in this app. So the cleanup functionality, we can just also quickly walk through how I would do this now with our findings.
Yeah.
So we have our IBAN findings. We can check what content it shows up in, and really see where it shows up, and then go to cleanup requests and set up one for this situation. You can choose the time frame of the cleanup. So here I chose 12 hours now. If it was a 12-hour scan, but you can also go down to 6 hours if before the scans were green. Otherwise, you might want to extend it to whatever time frame you know you've ingested the data. Then for our example here, I'm not going to delete all buckets, but just go with the logs bucket. And I'm going to call it IBAN Deletion. And we'll use my colleague now, made up colleague that is gonna check if what I want to delete is in line with what we're allowed to delete. So that's, I think, a quite cool feature of our app, that our cleanup requests only work with the 4i principle. So your users, when they have permission to use this app, still cannot just delete it just by themselves, but you always have a person that can check and really make sure that data is only deleted in the way you want it to be deleted.
Cool.
Yeah, so now we can configure the DQL here to make it more fine-grained, to really only capture the data that contains, or to only delete the records that contain the sensitive data we have found before. So I just added a matcher here for this specific example now. And now I can run the query to see if it actually would find data to delete. And I see, yes, this looks like the logs I want to delete, and then can create the request. And now my colleague could, it takes a few seconds or a little bit until this shows up here. Now my colleague Kurt can review my request and even amend the request if he thinks maybe what I want to delete is too broad or too narrow. And I will see once he has approved it, it is going to be deleted. And right now I see, okay, he's reviewing it, or I'm waiting for his review.
Yeah.
Yeah, and keep an eye out once this is solved, so I know now my environment is again compliant to my requirements in the organization.
Awesome. And you can see obviously from your historical data now, I know this is a demo environment or a test environment, that you've played around with this and that you've done this. So after you are changing your ingesting rules, these scan results will hopefully go from red to green, or if you're introducing something new, then from green to red. Quick question, can you then get also alerted on this? So when a scan runs, how does this work? Do I need to look at this? Do I get an event that I can then also trigger a workflow on?
Yeah, so you get an event through our audit logs, and you could, for example, set up alerting in the
anomaly detection. Yeah, I know it.
Difficult word for me. Yeah, so then it just lets you know that there are results to the scan. We are right now really fine-tuning what we want to show in the alerts, because it's again going outside of this quite restricted environment in our app. So we are just telling you there are results, but not this was found.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, because also when you're setting up this app, there are quite a few steps to set up the permissions to really make sure that only the people in your environment that you want to have access to quite sensitive information, I would say, are able to use it this way. So that's the different steps we've taken to make sure only people who are supposed to see it can see it.
Yeah, cool. So that means, for my recap, is obviously we are promoting best practices, and we have a lot of built-in capabilities to never ever capture any confidential information. But it could be by configuration mistake, it could be by new patterns coming up, or the way you are logging confidential information, that it has not been set up yet for cleansing during ingest. So the Sensitive Data Center provides the automated scans, so you can always scan the data and see if there might be any confidential information that made it in. If that happens, you can get an automated notification, as we just discussed. You can then validate this, and we also give you built-in instructions on how to solve this, either through configuration, like telling the OneAgent not to capture certain things by adding a rule, giving you recommendations on how you can configure your OpenTelemetry pipeline, or also adding additional rules to the OpenPipeline itself. And then if data was captured and it should not be captured, should not be stored, you can also request the deletion of this data. That's cool. And now we just all hope we have a court that can then also work on all of these requests to then delete this data. Nice. Pauline, I have one final question for you. This is all on logs. Also your blog talks about this is for logs. Obviously, logs is where most of the confidential data comes in. Now, I do work a lot with people in the AI space, meaning monitoring AI and agentic workflows, where we also get a lot of logs, but we also get traces. And so I'm actually wondering, What is the plan to also support traces here?
Yeah, we have that on the roadmap to in the beginning of next year to really onboard all our data types we have in Dynatrace to especially support those AI use cases, so that you can really feel safe in using all our capabilities there.
The good news is obviously everybody can already detect any type of confidential information if it's captured on the spans, because you can obviously execute your queries. You mentioned this in the very beginning. This is really a super helper because behind the scenes it is executing queries on your behalf and is then alerting you, whether it's on logs, metrics, or spans. You can do this yourself already with the help of a little bit DQL. But yeah, Pauline, this is super. This is awesome. We will link the blog post also in the video recording. Anything else that we missed, that we skipped? Anything else you want to show?
Maybe just in addition to spans and traces, we already have like extensive masking there available through
Of course.
OneAgent, Hotel, and OpenPipeline, as you mentioned before. And yeah, onboarding them to the scanner is going to be, as you said, the cherry on top, that it's just all available on one click or 2 clicks, basically. But yeah. Just wanted to highlight this,
that's a very
that it's just one part of our bigger posture.
exactly very good point. Coming back to OpenPipeline, coming back to the AI observability, if you have spans that are capturing, for instance, prompts or responses, you should at ingest already mask it and remove it, but you can also, as a defense, always in the OpenPipeline specify rules. All the spans that are coming in, they should be automatically validated. So yeah, thank you for that additional comment. Cool. Pauline, I know security, sensitive data is a topic that will not go away. It will just get more and more important. And I also know that you are investing in this and building more. So I'm looking forward to having you back in the future to enlighten us on what else you have built to make the life of a security engineer easier.
Thank you for having me today, and looking forward to hopefully showing new additions to our privacy posture soon.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.